heard him say nothing's ever promised tomorrow, today. But as of now, Kanye West will be on ballots here in Colorado this November. How is that possible? And how easy is it for anyone to get on our ballot? Another department wishes Aurora would get it together because their inbox is loaded too. Our word of thanks totals just keep climbing. Now Kyle's challenging you to bring them to 14,000 feet. And next turns 4 today. We're looking back at some stories from our first show and looking forward to what's happening with them today. It's really easy to get your name on the presidential ballot in Colorado. Now, don't go getting any ideas because you missed the deadline by a few hours, but Kanye West did not. He spent $1,000 on this just to get his name on the ballot. But who's behind the effort to get that name on the ballot? And why is it so easy in Colorado? Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
Kanye West could be on Colorado's presidential ballot in November because it's pretty darn easy to be on Colorado's presidential ballot. You can write a check for $1,000 and have 9 Colorado registered voters agree to be your presidential electors who will cast their electoral college votes for you should you win. Anyone had until 3 p.m. to turn in the money and the names of the electors. Vice News reported today on an email from Rachel George, a Colorado Republican strategist and former spokeswoman for then-Congressman Cory Gardner. The email was seeking people to pledge to be electoral college voters for Kanye West. So why Kanye? Why last minute? Each state has different deadlines, and he can't qualify to be on the November ballot in each state.
We have a long tradition of having lots of options. At the same time, the strategy and the ability to try to use or manipulate those rules for your benefit, in this case, it looks like that's what the GOP are trying to do. That's part of the nature of politics.
Like I said, it's easy to be a presidential candidate in Colorado. Besides President Trump and Hillary Clinton, do you know how many names were on the 2016 ballot? Well, there was also Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, and 24 other names. And yeah, even Sharunda Fox received 2 votes. Before Kanye can qualify for the November ballot, the Secretary of State needs to confirm the 9 electors are actually registered Colorado voters. We reached out to all 9 people who signed up to be Kanye's electors. We got 7 voicemails. 1, hey, talk to the campaign, not me. And this response from prospective elector Matthew Zielinski, quote, the democratic process in this country should be inclusive and everybody should have a shot. The more the merrier, Steve.
Sounds like someone who could potentially, go for Kanye West.
Look, if you're going to sign up to be an elector, and we've talked about this, as the Supreme Court said, you have to cast your vote. Whoever wins Colorado, you have to cast your vote. It'd be nice if the 9 electors that we reached out to, if the other 7 would get back to us and let us know, to let you know why they think he should be president, or at least win president in Colorado.
Yeah, I would like to know that. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. So what were you doing at 10 o'clock last night? If you weren't watching 9 News at 10, Loveland City councilors were arguing over Black Lives Matter, Marxism, and defunding the police. The meeting, which lasted more than 4.5 hours, eventually led to Councilman Steve Olson saying this.
I make a motion that this council affirm its support of the Loveland Police by committing to, number 1, rejecting the notion of defund the police. Number 2, do everything possible to ensure our police receive the funds necessary to guarantee they are properly trained and equipped to assess the potential threats to the community and appropriately responds to those threats. And number 3, support personal liability financial protections for police officers for incidences in the line of duty.
Now, there was back and forth over whether this was a symbolic motion that the city would just say it supports its police officers, or if this was an actionable item where the city would financially back officers who go on trial for wrongdoing. Now, similar to a decision made by the Greenwood Village City Council last month. The meeting ended around 10:45 without a decision. Council meets again next week, and we will keep an eye on if they pick Councilman Olson's motion back up. Aurora Police is getting a nationwide reputation, one sparked again this weekend by that video of officers forcing a bunch of kids to the ground in a mistaken stolen car. Now, people are airing their grievances with APD, and it would appear that many of them are not sure where to go to do that. You know, there's an Aurora in Illinois as well. It's a suburb of Chicago, and the Aurora, Illinois Police Department had to tweet yesterday to remind people that they are not Aurora, Colorado. they were getting a mess of mean tweets. And the funny part is that people still responded to that tweet. You know, the one where they say, we're not Aurora, Colorado, with anger about our Aurora as well. So I feel their pain. I've been getting Steve Spangler's hate mail for years. And you know, the science guy who blows stuff up here at 9 News. In fact, the only time I was ever on national news, MSNBC supered me as Steve Spangler, so I got that going for me. In case you were wondering, our Aurora Police is just at Aurora PD on Twitter. The Illinois department is Aurora Police IL, and in case you're wondering, that's short for Illinois. Hey, it's our birthday today. Next with Kyle Clark premiered on this day 4 years ago. Your birthday cards, they better be in the mail. And while we wait for those, we're going to do a little reminiscing. It is time for What Did We Used to Talk About? The birthday edition. Today, we're looking back at some of the standout stories from the very first episode of Next. First up is the Cdot Campaign that caught a lot of people's attention 4 years ago. It was an in-your-face reminder of why you shouldn't drive while high, and our attempt to give it a little perspective.
So, about that giant joint hanging on the Courtyard Marriott downtown. It's a new Cdot public service campaign unveiled this week. Hits lead to hits. They want the car-shaped joint to get people to think about the fact that driving high is a crime. It got us thinking about another important thing. How much would it cost to buy a joint the size of a car? So, taking the EPA's average weight of an American vehicle, 4,079 pounds, a rough estimate of the cost of marijuana in Denver, $160 per half ounce, we can tell you with some authority that a joint the size and weight of a car would run you $19.5 million. Hashtag journalism.
Ah, memories. But today's show isn't just about what's in the rear view, you know, it's about the news, you know. So what's the news on that old giant car joint? We reached out to Cdot today to see if they had it, you know, locked away in storage somewhere. Unfortunately, they got rid of it. Cdot spokesman tells us the campaign did help raise some good awareness about the dangers of driving high.
So a lot of you come here with $5 in hand each Wednesday, maybe not in hand so much as in mind, as we always offer a word of thanks to a small or mid-sized nonprofit somewhere in our state, some group that's doing really timely, important work these days. By pooling your $5 and mine, we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last 2 months. So let's talk about this week's project. The word of thanks that comes to mind when I think of the Colorado 14ers initiative is Peak. This is the nonprofit that protects Colorado's highest peaks from wear and tear of our tracks up and down them. The Colorado 14ers initiative builds and rebuilds trails, and they replant high-altitude vegetation, the kind of things that can take decades to grow and just one careless step off the trail to destroy. Now, they usually have 500 to 700 volunteers that help with this work each summer, but because of social distancing, those volunteers can't get together. The work instead is just done by paid crews that are together as a unit. Anecdotal reports suggest that Coloradans and visitors are putting a lot of extra wear and tear on those outdoor places during the pandemic. And the Colorado 14ers initiative is out there protecting and restoring the natural integrity of the places we're so proud of. They have an Adopt a Peak program that's working atop some of the peaks that you can see from the Front Range, like Mount Evans and Grays and Torreys, down to Uncompahgre Peak in the San Juans and Capitol Peak in the Elk Mountains. If you text the word thanks to 303-871-1491, I will send you the link to donate. Again, that's texting thanks to 303-871-1491. And each week on Word of Thanks, if you're good for $5, I will match the first 50 of those $5 donations from Next viewers. Please join me in helping the Colorado 14ers initiative protect our state's highest places.
We're all about the hot button issues today, like how COVID-19 could mean an even longer wait for people in Longmont who were promised a train. And actual buttons, because we are feeling a bit nostalgic on our 4th birthday. Next.
We're hoping for some beneficial rain in Denver tonight. Could do without the hail and lightning. Severe thunderstorm watch until 9 o'clock. Our high today back at 92. We'll see this number again tomorrow. The thunderstorms are rolling into a severe thunderstorm watch area extended out through 9 o'clock. Hail and wind with storms that are tracking east of the metro area, and they'll go late into the night. The best chance for rains within the next half hour here in the city, and then the storms move through Yuma, Ray, and Burlington, and then they're out of here. Tomorrow it's going to be sunny and warm with less thunderstorm coverage. A A stray storm tonight and then clearing, a low 60. Tomorrow, our high at 92, 20% chance of late day storms. Then we get you through the extended period with hot highs from 90 to 95 degrees right into the weekend and first part of next week.
Next turns 4 today, so we are remembering, what did we used to talk about? Buttons. In our first show, we talked about buttons.
Steve Stager's reporting will be featured here most nights. For this premiere, we desperately wanted to assign him to cover a cat fashion show. Couldn't find one, so we sent Steve to a button collectors convention in Denver and told him that he can keep his job if he can make buttons interesting in the next 60 seconds.
When you tell somebody you collect buttons, they go, "You do what? You collect what? Why would anybody collect these?"
That was my reaction. Then I found out there's a national button convention every year, and it's here.
And I made a necklace.
There are over 500,000 buttons in here.
It's arranged by the National Button Society. Yep, there's a National Button Society.
To promote the interest in buttons, to promote the preservation of historic buttons, and the study of buttons, and the enjoyment of buttons.
And they know a lot more than I do about clothes fasteners, like...
Buttons were probably one of the first items to be recycled.
There you go. And I apparently made buttons interesting in 60 seconds because 4 years later, I'm still here. One man's trash is another man's treasure, but not when it comes to Colorado's open space and parks. Read the sign or you'll get a fine, and wind up in our Not How You Colorado segment next. Let's talk COVID-19 numbers in our state. The positive trend we have seen in the data over the last week and a half or so, it continues again today. The state processed more than 16,000 tests yesterday. Our 7-day average is down from where it was a week ago, but it is still well over 10,000 tests per day. Our positivity rate is still trending downward. The 7-day moving average is around 3.76%. 203 people are currently hospitalized with COVID-19 in Colorado. That's up it's up 1 from yesterday, but it's always important to look at the trend instead. And the 7-day average is 217. That number is slowly moving down. 25 patients have been discharged or transferred in the last 24 hours. Colorado added 594 new cases yesterday. The 7-day average is now at 456 per day, down more than 100 from where it was a week ago. We're less than 30 years away from that Longmont train, according to RTD's calculations, though the pandemic might actually change that. RTD staff is looking at ways to cut $160 million from its budget next year and avoid cutting services any more than it already has. All of this is because of COVID. One way to get some extra funding in the budget is to pull from the savings account for the Longmont train. The agency has saved about $120 million to work on the final Fast Tracks projects. Now, it's going to take an estimated $1.5 billion to get that whole job done, so they aren't quite 10% there yet. So the agency is slated to pour more money into that savings account every year, and staff has suggested that they could use some of the money saved to offset the budget shortfall. They could also defer future payments. Now, the board will work on next year's budget over the next few months. It's unclear if they'll touch that money since the train is such a controversial topic. And a reminder here, RTD is obligated to build that train since the plan went to the ballot for Fast Tracks. The only way they could get out of building it is if they ask the voters again. Here is another example to remind you that is not how you Colorado. This is what Meadow Creek Reservoir looked like this past weekend. Our viewer Anna took these photos. You can see bags of garbage all around these bear-proof trash cans. There's even a sign posted to remind people that if trash can't fit inside the trash can, it should be packed up and taken out when they leave. Aside from this just being plain disrespectful, it can also get you a fine, and it can put the wildlife in the area in danger too. Today, on our 4th birthday, we remember our dedication to taking your feedback, even if it's not always the nicest. Next.
Back with a quick reminder about our Word of Thanks micro-giving project for the week. It's wild how Next viewers have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in 2 months just because you give $5, somebody else gives $5, and we do it together. This week, we're supporting the Colorado 14ers initiative. They're the group that rebuilds the trails and protects nature atop Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks. Seen a lot of traffic this year, and this nonprofit can usually rely on hundreds of volunteers to help out with the work, but not this year because of the pandemic. If you text the word thanks to 303-871-1491, we'll send you the link to donate. That's thanks to 303-871-1491. As always, if you're good for $5, I'll match the first 50 of those donations. And the next time we look up at Mount Evans, we can say, yeah, I helped out up there. Thanks.
So, what did we used to talk about? Birthday edition. What's a birthday without a little feedback from your family and friends on what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong in life, right? So we started this show 4 years ago with the idea that we would allow all of you at home to tell us how we're doing, good or bad. And you might remember that we started our feedback tradition with a little story about a local bar's reaction to a bit of negative feedback they'd received.
A final word about feedback. We love it, good and bad. We can take it. Be honest, like the person who wrote a recent Yelp review for a bar on South Broadway.
Bar, people. That was the review in its entirety. 1 star out of 5. So you know what the owners of the High Dive Bar did? They put it on T-shirts. Bar, people.
You gotta love them for doing that. So the co-owner of High Dive says they've sold about 1,200 of those classic shirts. We can call them classic now because it's 4 years since then. They're still selling them now. Right now, sales from merchandise is really the only thing keeping them afloat since they've been closed during the pandemic, and they are hoping to reopen as soon as this weekend. You can find those shirts, by the way, on High Dive's website. Finish with your feedback now. Lila wrote in to say, I don't believe Steve Spangler has ever received hate mail. Well, Lila, you should look at my inbox sometime when Steve does one of those tricks with the money. A lot of people write in wondering what the heck is going on and if he's breaking law. I don't think he actually is. Karen wrote in to say, I'd long forgotten the stories from the first day. They were so fun. I loved the button segment, then and now. Keep up the fun, great work. I always thought I was forgettable. But apparently the button segment stuck in people's minds. We asked for your advice on how to deal with a 4-year-old. Blake Street Bums on Twitter wrote lots of screen time, which seems about perfect for a television show. And Diane said 4-year-old, cake, and ice cream. That sounds like a great plan. I could go for cake and ice cream right now. Thank you so much to all of you who just started watching and who have been with us for 4 years. We will see you next time.